Welcome. I am Dr. Charles Mitchell, Chancellor of the Seattle Community Colleges, and it is my pleasure to introduce the following program highlights of our Martin Luther King Jr. celebration for the year 2004. This event took place on January 16th to mark the birthday of Dr. King. The Seattle Community Colleges have been presenting this program for the community for the past 30 years. The Reverend Bernice King was our guest speaker for this anniversary program. She is the youngest daughter of Dr. King, and as you will see, she has inherited her father's skills in presenting her message. We were pleased that our MC was Joyce Taylor, news anchor at King TV. The music is always a special part of this program, and this year we had the Mount Zion Inspirational Choir. Our program took place at Mount Zion Baptist Church, and they have hosted this event for several years. The Seattle Community Colleges are committed to diversity and excellence in education, and I'm proud to say that these are also the value of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Our program is among the oldest and certainly the most distinguished in our region. Our audience includes civic and community leaders, residents from throughout the area, students from grade school to college, and with the show produced by SCC TV, it now includes all of you.
The Mount Zion Inspirational Chorus. Beautiful. As I was listening to that incredible speech by the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and I was listening to the section where he talked about his children and the dreams that he had for his children, I looked up above, and you can't see it, so you're at a disadvantage down here. But I see this rainbow of children. It's beautiful. Hello, kids and college students. You all are what this is really all about, so a special, special welcome to all of you. And to each and every one of you, thank you so much for coming. I am incredibly honored to be your MC. I'm Joyce Taylor here from King 5 News, and it's a thrill for me. This is the second time I've been able to host this program for you, so thank you for the opportunity to spend this morning with you. And we come, unfortunately, only once a year, but we come today to honor the great, short, incredible life of the late Dr. Martin Luther King and to honor his legacy that will go on for many generations beyond ours. And we are very, very grateful and lucky, I think, to have his daughter with us. Dr. King's daughter, the Reverend Bernice King, is going to be our keynote today, and she will be along in just a minute. I'm told she's in the building, and she has a very special presentation for us. So, as you know, throughout his life, Dr. King was inspired and surrounded by wonderful gospel music, and so are we, of course, this morning. Thank you once again. So we want you all to rise, and the choir is going to lead us in singing Lift Every Voice, one verse, the first verse.
There we this program would be incomplete without the singing of Precious Lord by Felicia Curry. No one can do it quite the way she can do it, and her husband is accompanying or playing at the organ. This song also was one of the favorite of Dr. King Sr.
Precious Lord, take my hand and lead
I am pleased to announce that Charlotte T. is a McKinney Scholar for the year 2004. Charlotte is one of 9 children, and she's the first one of her family to attend college. She is a student at North Seattle Community College, and she plans to transfer to Seattle University to study pediatric nursing. Charlotte is a dedicated student who takes up to 18 credits a quarter, works 18 hours a week at the college, and she holds down a part-time job. All this while maintaining a 3.14 GPA. I think you will agree Charlotte is already a success and is growing into a fine leader. I would like to ask North Seattle Community College President Ron Lafayette to come forward. He's already here. And join me in congratulating Charlotte T. The McKinney Scholarship is a reminder that our accomplishments can live on in succeeding generations. When we talk about Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., we often hear the word legacy. We often talk as much about the future as about the past. With that thought, it is a personal pleasure and a delight for me to introduce the Reverend Bernice King as our keynote speaker. I knew her father. We were members of the same freshman class at Morehouse College, September 1944. When we entered, he was 15, I was 17. As soon as I turned 18, Uncle Sam found me, and I spent 17 months with him. Then I returned to Morehouse College, made up all but 1 year, and graduated 1 year after Dr. King graduated in 1948. I would like to say that I hope we are doing honor to his memory today by having his daughter here, and not doing what is necessarily politically correct in some eyes, but telling the truth where the truth needs to be told. There are many people who now honor Dr. King because it's easier to build a monument than to establish a movement and keep it going. Dr. King established the movement, and at the time of his death, many people had deserted him because he was not saying the popular thing or the right thing, according to some, about another war. He did not pander to popular opinion. He told the truth, come hell or high water. Amen, all by myself. Like her father, Bernice King is gifted with many talents. Let me say this, of the 4 children, the King children, she is the one who received the legacy or the gift or the talent of articulation that graced her father. And for that, we are blessed by her presence today. She's well known as an author, a lawyer, a minister, and a public speaker. She first demonstrated her father's gift of oratory when she was 17 years old and spoke out against apartheid before the United Nations. Many of you perhaps in this room may remember know Bernice King from the famous Pulitzer Prize winning photograph of a 5-year-old girl who lay on her mother's lap during her father's funeral. She grew into a scholar like her father and earned a bachelor's degree from Spelman College, as well as a Master of Divinity degree and a Doctorate of Law from Emory University. She has also been honored with a Doctor of Divinity degree from Wesley College. In 1961, her father paid his only visit to Seattle and stirred up this place like nothing had prior to that time, because in 1961, he was the most feared black person out there. And many people, even some people of color, were afraid of him and his visit. But he came and spoke, and we have never been the same, and for that we are eternally grateful. A newspaper reporter put it, the lives of nearly everyone who heard King speak changed, and those who brought him here, hosted his speeches, redoubled their efforts to improve this corner of America. The Reverend Bernice King's visit today is a part of that ongoing effort. She holds not only the legacy of her father, but she is creating her own. And we receive her today not only as the child of her parents, but of a person who is making her mark in the world today, because we surely need some decent marks, not necessarily in space, that's fine, but down here in this space that all of us occupy. And one day when time and space will be no more, we will all have to give an account of what we did here on earth. Well, with that in mind, we introduce our keynote speaker for the day, the Reverend Dr. Bernice King.
I am delighted and happy. I believe I was here about 9 years ago in this pulpit, and I am glad to be back again in this pulpit to say what thus saith the Lord out of my heart to your heart. Before I do any of that, I've got to spend just a few moments, because I've brought some very important things with me. And I think it's important that I share it with you, because too often people have tried to understand and know Dr. King through the writings of other people. There's a danger to that, because I don't believe anyone in here would go to the library and check out a book on video recorders or DVD players to understand how to operate your particular DVD player or video tape recorder. You would pick up the manual that comes with that particular DVD recorder to learn how to operate that particular recorder, because it has been specifically written with that in mind by the manufacturer of that particular recorder. Well, the same is with the life of Martin Luther King Jr. Too many people have learned about him from other people. And I want to encourage everybody on the sound of my breath, no matter how young you are or how old you are, to get a hold of the writings of Martin Luther King Jr., for indeed he has been one of the most prolific writers of his time. A lot of people don't know that my father wrote 6 books himself while he was leading that awesome movement, and I just want to list those for you. You may be able to find some of them via the kingcenter.org website. But I want you to know what they are, because you need to study his mind and what he had to say, because everything that you receive out of the hand of the biographers, no offense, but some of it is inaccurate. And as the daughter of, I can accurately say that because I want you all to know what is true and what is accurate. So those books, just to list them, is Stride Toward Freedom, Strength to Love, Why We Can't Wait, Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community. Sound like something we need to be dealing with today. The Measure of a Man. And then the final one is Trumpet of Conscience. Martin Luther King Jr., first and foremost, was a man of God. And people oftentimes have defined him as a civil rights leader. And in my personal opinion, I think that is erroneous. I think he was a prophet sent by God who happened to affect civil rights in this nation. We've been sleeping, America. We've been lulled to sleep by trivial pursuits. We've been fascinated and we've been drawn to things that don't really make that much of a difference. And most of us don't realize that the reason Martin Luther King Jr. was so awesome and that why he was so successful had nothing to do with his great oratory skill. It didn't even have anything to do with his nonviolent philosophy. While I do not minimize or shortchange the impact of his nonviolent philosophy and its critical need to address even today the issues of our time, that's not what made him truly successful. He was not successful because he got the highest degree that our land has to offer in the form of a PhD degree. That's not success. He was not successful because he was born into a middle-class family and for the most part maintained that status throughout his life. That's not what made him successful. He was not successful just because he was at the forefront of a movement that caused a shift in the American society. While that has been critical and important and helped to define even the women's liberation movement and and movements all across this world, that's really not what made him successful. Well, preacher Bernice, what made him successful? The words of a wise man, perhaps the wisest man of all times, the wealthiest man of all times, are these words: to everything there is a season, a time to every purpose under the heaven. When Solomon spoke those words, he was not speaking just in his own time and his own generation. For indeed, those words are very relevant to those of us who are here today. At the end of his life, Martin Luther King Jr. said these words. These were the last words out of his mouth when he spoke before a public audience. And I bring it to your attention now. Remember, this is your wake-up call. You can't snooze anymore. I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop. And I don't mind, like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now because I just want to do God's will. And he's allowed me to go up to the mountain, and I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. And I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man, for mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. What would have happened if Martin Luther King Jr. and those who stood with him in that movement did not understand the importance of doing God's will? I'm afraid that we are where we are today, almost on the precipice of self-destruction, without any conscious awareness of it. Because many of us have gotten off of the path that God placed us on. If I had to give you some kind of title or something to capture what I want to say to you on this morning and afternoon, it would be: no longer should you just live existing. It's time for everybody in here to understand one fundamental thing that Martin Luther King understood as you listen to those words. Martin King lived on purpose. He did not live for the bling bling, young people. He did not live for fame, and he did not live for the next paycheck. He did not live for a corporate promotion. He did not live for a retirement. He did not live for popularity. He did not live for the next hit. Martin Luther King Jr. lived on purpose. And the tragedy of our time is that most of us are living for the wrong things. And we're not living according to God's ordained purpose for our life. That's what made him great. That's what made him successful, because he found out, God, why am I here on earth? What did you put me here for? And I want each one of you to know that you're not here by mistake or accident on earth. Out of millions, excuse me for being so blunt, but out of millions of sperm, you made it to earth. The other ones died in your mama's womb, but you penetrated that egg. And that suggests there is something great and awesome about you, and that also suggests that God has you here for a reason. You're unique, you're peculiar, and we can no longer continue to raise our children saying, I want you to be like Martin Luther King Jr. No, don't do them like that. Let them be who God placed them on this earth to be. There will never again be another Martin Luther King. There will never again be a Mahatma Gandhi. They were who they were because that's who God created them to be. And they lived their life according to the God-ordained purpose. They tapped into why God put them here on earth, because they must have understood what Jeremiah the prophet said when he said, before I formed you in your mother's womb, I knew you, and I sanctified you, and I ordained you a prophet to the nations. They understood that even before they got a body, they had a purpose. See, God didn't create any of us and then decide, what am I going to do with you? He had purpose set in order before you got here. And the problem is, most of us have been distracted and we have been on detours because we're looking at too many other people's lives, and we're trying to fit into a status quo system, and we're trying to repeat what somebody else did instead of discovering, why on earth did God put me here, and what is it about me that I'm supposed to contribute to this life? That's what made him great and awesome. That's why we're celebrating him, because he lived his purpose. That's why he could say out of his own mouth that longevity has its place, and I would love to live a long life. But he understood one fundamental thing. He understood life has less to do with how long you live. It has what to do with how well you live. We're on our own pursuits. We're on our own agendas and own schedules. That's why we have injustices. That's why we have racial strife and tension. That's why we went to war. Because we have a whole world of people who don't know who the excuse the hell they are. And when you don't know who you are and why you are here, you will spend your entire life diminishing other people. You will spend your entire life trying to take down other people. You will get caught up in a spirit of jealousy that will just overtake your life in such a way that it possesses you. And that's what's wrong with us. Can you imagine a world where everybody lived on purpose? If I was doing what God put me here to do, you were doing what God put you to do, and Bush was doing what God really put him here to do. Saddam Hussein was doing what God had placed him to do. Can you imagine? Because the fact of the matter is, God is a creator. He's not a destroyer. And so if he put us here and he gave us purpose, it's God ordained, then anything that is not towards creation, but is toward destruction, has nothing to do with God. And that includes America. Because we are not justified in destroying life because life destroyed us. I knew you were going to get quiet then. Listen to this. This is terrible. It's horrifying. Every 1 second, a public high school student is suspended. Every 9 seconds, a high school student drops out. Every 11 seconds, a child is reported abused or neglected. Every 20 seconds, a child is arrested. Every 43 seconds, a baby is born into poverty. This is in America, the wealthiest nation in the world. Every 1 minute, a baby is born to a teen mother. Every 4 minutes, a child is arrested for drug abuse. Every 8 minutes, a child is arrested for a violent crime. Every 42 minutes, a child or youth under 20 dies from an accident. Every 3 hours, a child or youth under 20 is killed by a firearm. Every 3 hours, a child or youth under 20 is a homicide victim. Every 5 hours, a child or youth under 20 commits suicide. There's no excuse for this. Every day, a young person under 25 dies from HIV infection. Among industrialized countries, the United States ranks first in military technology, first in the number of millionaires and billionaires, first in health technology, first in military exploits, first in defense spending, 10th in 8th grade science scores, 11th in the proportion of children living in poverty, 16th in living standards among the poorest 1/5 of children, 16th in efforts to lift children out of poverty. 18th in the income gap between the rich and poor children. 21st in 8th grade math scores. 22nd in infant mortality. And we have the nerve to go around the world trying to create democracy in other places, freedom in other places. Because America doesn't know its purpose. And that's the problem. But hear this last. This is a crying shame. And guess what? The President of the United States is not the guilty one. It's everybody sitting here and everybody who calls himself an American. Because it is not his sole responsibility to address the problems, the issues, the injustices, the evils, or whatever of our time. It is each one of us, each one of our responsibilities, because we too have been placed here for a reason to impact, to affect, change, last in protecting our children against gun violence. Why? Because we don't understand living on purpose. We live in a very self-centered society. It's about me, myself, and I. We don't care about the next person. But I want to challenge you with this thought. What if Martin King decided to become a dean of a prestigious university? What if Rosa Parks had decided to just go ahead and stay seated that day in that chair? What if Mary had aborted Jesus? We don't think about things like this. Where would we be? Somehow they were able to grasp that I'm not here for me. Can I let you in on a little secret? I don't want anybody else to hear. It ain't about you. But what about my security? What about my safety? It's not about you. What about my comfort? What about my convenience? I see some of y'all getting angry and it's okay. That means I'm telling the truth. Penetrating something. And you're upset because you can't figure out how to get out of here under the sound of this truth, because the reality is I'm irrelevant because God knows all and he's now going to hold you responsible and I have nothing to do with it. That's what's so wonderful and beautiful about this. I love microphones. But it's not about you. It's about the next generation. That's why he could say, I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. He had a vision of a world that was different than the world he grew up in as a child. And because that vision captured his attention and it was given to him by God, that's what he pursued. And so trivial pursuits were not a part of his life. It's no accident that at age 15, he graduated from high school. At age 19, he graduated from Morehouse College when most people are just starting college. It's no accident that at age 22, he was finishing his seminary degree. It's no accident at age 26 that he got his PhD degree, and shortly before that met up with Coretta Scott King, and they married. His life was lived on purpose. It's no accident that he met up along the way with Mahatma Gandhi and studied him, and it's no accident that all of the different philosophers that he studied, that he grasped these people, because at some point God had already ordained him to lead this movement. And I say that because there are things that are occurring every day in your life and you're missing it because you don't understand living life on purpose. And so most of us are preoccupied with tomorrow, worried about tomorrow. Most of us, others of us are preoccupied with the regrets of yesterday, so we miss the now. Now is your time. Not tomorrow, not yesterday, but now. This is the only time you will ever have is now. Even when you think about the future, there's no such thing really when we talk about it, because when you get to the future, guess what? It will be now. But we do have to live on purpose, realizing that there's a generation that comes behind us. And most of us aren't generational people. And so we're not seeing a bigger picture. So we're not laying down our egos. Y'all so quiet. We have a responsibility. Your purpose is intertwined with humanity. None of us is separate and distinct. Can't you see that? How all of us are interconnected, even way over in Iraq. That thing is affecting our life now in America. And what we are doing is affecting the life of those in the Middle East. And we have the nerve to be consumed in selfishness. No, Daddy said we are all tied in an inescapable network of mutuality, a single garment of destiny, and what affects one directly affects all indirectly. The whole world is impacted by what's going on right now. The whole world is impacted by the direction of our nation. And we can't continue to be consumed in trivial stuff. Can I tell you the kind of trivial stuff we're consumed in? Especially the generation that's under 35 years of age. These are the kind of things we're consumed in. Court TV, Eliminate, American Idol, Big Brother, Survivor, Real World, Rich Girls, Joe the Millionaire, Ordinary Joe. Y'all being quiet because you look at this stuff and this is what your life is consumed with, and that's why you can't live on purpose, because that's what you are preoccupied with. Who wants to marry a millionaire? Bachelor and now bachelorette. Pumped. Cribs. How I'm living. Queer eye for the straight guy. What's wrong with us in America? That we have diminished life to trivial things and we don't understand the substance of life. That the substance of life is really about giving our life to other people. It's about being able to get to the end of your life. Hear me. It's about being able to get to the end of your life and know that your life mattered. Will it really matter that you lived? Or will we bury you, throw the dirt over you, and move on? Will it really matter that you lived? I'm pausing for a reason. Because you know what? We attend programs like this. We clap, we holler, we attend church, some of us, and we scream, holler, get emotional and all that. But we never ask critical questions. And you know why that is? Because most of us have been duped into just being passive receivers. We're not critical thinkers. I think it was John Maxwell, in his book, he has a book called Thinking for a Change. He's a great best-selling author on leadership. And he said, poor thinkers know what? Average thinkers know how. Great thinkers know why. Because they don't just accept what somebody tells them on CNN. But they ask critical questions. And I won't delve into that part of it. You understand that. But will it matter that you came this way? Will your kids be grateful? See, you can make a decision when you leave here today that I'm not going to live on purpose. I'm going to keep doing what I want to do. And that's a personal decision you have to make. But it's a personal decision, but it's not private. Because if you don't live on purpose, you're depriving someone of what God placed you here for. One of the greatest tragedies of our time, greatest crimes of our time, is that most of us are guilty of robbery. And if the law had to be applied, we'd all be locked up. And you know why we're guilty of robbery? But because we are robbing this universe of our purpose, of our potential, of our destiny. Because we want to live the life we want to live. Because I don't want to live a life of sacrifice, perhaps, if that's my road. Somebody did it for you. We wouldn't be here today, not at this level, if he didn't take a bullet, if they didn't get beaten, they didn't get arrested and locked up. If those little kids had not had a spirit of the power of God operating in them when they faced those water holes and those biting dogs, we wouldn't be here today. But you know what it was? They had vision. They not only had a dream, they lived in pursuit of that dream. And it does no good just to dream. You got to begin to pursue that. Whatever your purpose is, you got to pursue it at all costs. And you can't worry about what opposing forces come against you. Martin King had all kind of opposing forces. At the beginning of the movement, he got a crazy call that said, if you don't get out of town in the next 3 days, I will blow up your home where you and your family are. And you know my daddy had the audacity to stay there. And my mama. With my older sister, who was only maybe a month or two old. Because you know what? They wasn't focused on what they were going through. How many of you are focused on what you're going through? Been through a divorce. Friends don't treat me right. Folk talking about me. I can barely make my ends meet. What you going through? Somebody else got a promotion over and above me. What you going through? I was abused as a child. What you going through? They weren't focused on what they were going through. They were focused on what they were going to. And that's what we have to do. We have destiny in us. How dare you get stuck on what you're going through? That is just part of the process. And so I'm going to leave you with something that really blew my mind. Because if you don't hear anything else today, I want you to hear this. When my father said, I'd like to live a long life, longevity has its way. But I just want to do God's will. He was 39 years old when he pronounced those words. I had just turned 5 years of age 7 days prior to that. 6 days prior to that, 7 days prior to the day he was assassinated. But when he spoke those words, my father was saying, there's nothing else for me to do. I've done what I'm supposed to do.
All right.
See, when people ask me, do you think we've made progress since your father and all that kind of stuff? I've had some wonderful pat answers, and I had to come to realize that some ways, yeah, but in many ways, no, because when he spoke, very few people understood that he was saying, I'm out of here. And it's on the rest of you all, which means you must pick up from where I left off. You must discover what God has told you to do and begin to do that. But instead, people got caught up in fitting in and becoming integrated into a society that they lost themselves, and they lost the reason why God placed them on this earth and a sense of mission and purpose. My Lord and Savior said very little when he hung on that cross. They say he had 7 last words, but perhaps the most powerful words that he spoke out of his mouth was, "It is finished." He said, God, I've done what you told me to do. I've accomplished my mission. I've taken care of my assignment on earth. And so there's nothing left in me. In other words, my father, Mahatma Gandhi, Jesus Christ, perhaps some other unnamed people, they died empty. Y'all missed that. The richest grounds on the face of this earth are not oil wells. They're not diamond mines and silver mines and gold mines. The richest grounds on the face of this earth are graveyards. Because buried in those graveyards are dreams and inventions and visions and ideas and paintings and songs that never got sung because people died full or half full instead of empty. I challenge you that when you leave here today, that you do a self-evaluation of your life, because if you truly want to honor the legacy and the life of Martin Luther King Jr., then you owe it to yourself to look at where you are in your own life, and if you gotta restart and push the button, then restart and say, from this day forward, God, what is it that you would have me to do to finish the mission and to accomplish the work? What is the peculiar assignment and the task that you would have me to do? Keep me focused on that, Lord, so that when I leave this earth, there's nothing left in me to do, because I'm dying empty. That's why when I'm flying on Delta Airlines and we meet up with turbulence along the way, there used to be a time that I'd get a little nervous and a little afraid because I had this vision of the plane going down and my life being lost in flames. But then when I got the revelation that Bernie's King, you can't die until you are finished, until you are empty, I sit back on the plane and I say, this plane cannot go down because I am not yet finished with what God has for me to do. I'm not empty yet. I've got too many more deposits to make all across this world. And so if I say anything else to you, it is find your purpose in life. Live it like no man, no woman, no child, or anybody else can live it, and finish strong and finish empty so that you can come to the end of your life and say, well, no man can take my life. I lay down my life. It's finished. God bless you.
Let us all stand for the singing of We Shall Overcome, but let me say this before we sing it. We're singing it for several reasons. One, because it was a hymn of the civil rights movement, but also we're singing it because it points out the fact we have not arrived yet at the promised land that we're talking about, but we're on our way. It's a journey. We shall overcome someday. We ought to overcome our fears and our phobias, racism and all isms. We have much to overcome, and we shall overcome. And as we move along, we have a checklist to move these things out of our way that we must overcome. We have to live together. We have to work together. Dr. King said if we don't learn how to live together, we'll all perish as fools. Now let us all join hands, reach across the aisle, take somebody by the hand. We shall overcome. Everybody sing. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We haven't gotten there, but we're on our way. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome. We are not afraid. No, no. Oh, we are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. Today. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We shall all be free. Everybody sing. We shall all be free. We shall all be free. We shall all be free. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome. We shall overcome.